California agriculture accounts for 80% of our water use, even though California agriculture is less than 2% of our economy. We have spent the last 2 decades in perpetual drought here, yet almond farmers in California have doubled in that time, despite the fact that almond production alone uses more water than all the humans and businesses in San Francisco and Los Angeles combined. Look at this chart of how much water it takes to grow different crops. Oranges, tomatoes, strawberries all take about 11 gallons to make 1 pound. Almonds, 1,900 gallons. That wasn't a problem back when it rained, but now there simply isn't enough water to go around, and we have to make a painful choice, getting it to the people or getting it in the nuts.
Good morning. It's Tuesday, Trump Tuesday, March the 24th, and this is The True Conservative. Welcome to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. I'm Ron, your host, and the only true conservative in the United States today. So today, after the Serenity Prayer and the patriotic song of the day, we will have Varney and Company, motivation, meditation, and President Trump. All that and more when I get back. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I should not change, the courage to change the things I should, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen. Thank you. Now, Varney and Company.
Varney and Company picks it up now. Stu, take it away.
That's news you can use, and
Yeah.
I like it. Yeah, seriously. Good morning, Maria.
Okay.
Good morning, everyone. The Wall Street Journal says the Gulf states, like Saudi Arabia, are edging towards joining the fight against Iran. That would be a breakthrough, adding firepower to America and Israel's war effort. Separately, Israel was hit by a barrage of missiles overnight. A 200-pound bomb landed in Tel Aviv. That means the Iranians are still capable of launching large numbers of missiles, despite over 8,000 Allied strikes. The price of oil is still a long way from $100 a barrel. It's currently at $91.84, and it's up about 4% this morning. Gas, only a couple of cents away from $4 a gallon. You're looking at $3.97 for regular across the country. California, Well, they're getting closer to $6 a barrel. Right now, they're at $5.82. And will you please look at diesel? That hurts truckers and farmers, up 6 cents overnight to $5.34. That could be inflationary. Stocks moving lower after a government report that productivity went down and labor costs went up. That, too, is inflationary. The Dow off maybe 200, NASDAQ down about 130. As for Bitcoin, you're looking at 70,900. Treasuries, the 10-year coming in at 4.39%. It's up 5 basis points. And we have the 2-year, you're looking at 3.89. That's up 5 basis points. Okay, right, interest rates up. Gold, $4,406 an ounce. All right, on the show today, talk of a bipartisan deal to end the shutdown. It would fund the TSA. The long lines and traveler frustration getting to the politicians. The TSA call-out rate is rising. ICE agents at the airport to help out the staff shortage frequently insulted by airline passengers. We have more on the talks to end the Iran war. The U.S. reportedly talking to Mohammed Bagher Ghalibaf. He is the Speaker of the Iranian Parliament. We don't know what authority he has, and we don't know whether he's the next decapitation target. We'll bring you more on the rise of anti-Semitism. This is ugly stuff. 4 ambulances operated by Jewish volunteers burned out in London. Prime Minister Keir Starmer calls it a shocking anti-Semitic arson attack. And in a world of bad news, there's something good. The Taliban says it has freed an American detainee held captive in Afghanistan for more than 400 days. Dennis Coyle of Colorado was abducted from his apartment in Kabul. That was in January of 2025. The Taliban says he is, quote, taking this step based on humanitarian sympathy and goodwill. It is Tuesday, March the 24th, 2026. Varney
and Company is about to begin. Non-profit news now. Back in a minute. Thank you. Watch liberals crumble, not from violence or revenge, but from the sheer power of your silence, your boundaries, your self-respect. That's how you break a liberal. You don't fight them on their turf. You evolve beyond it. Liberals thrive in chaos, draining, and attention. But what if I told you that you, as a conservative, hold the key to making them absolutely miserable, not by stooping to their level, but by rising above it? Your indifference is one of the most powerful weapons you possess in the presence of a liberal. It isn't coldness. It isn't apathy. It is control. It is clarity. It is the refusal to hand over your emotional energy to someone who feeds on chaos and insecurity. Liberals aren't sustained by love. They're sustained by your reactions. Every time you defend yourself in desperation, every time you try to explain your value, every time you get pulled into the liberals' spiral of blame and manipulation, you give them exactly what they want. Proof that they still matter to you. But when you, as a conservative, disengage, not with bitterness, not with anger, but with poise, you begin to reclaim your power, and to liberals, nothing is more terrifying. Indifference doesn't mean you don't feel. It means you've decided who gets to witness those feelings. It means you've made a conscious choice to stop performing for liberals who never clapped for you unless they stood to benefit. It means your peace is no longer for sale. This infuriates the liberal because it tells them that they've lost access, not just to your life, but to your attention. And attention is their drug. When you don't feed the drama, the liberal begins to suffocate. When you don't justify your choices, they panic. When you simply move on quietly and confidently, they are left to wrestle with the one thing they cannot manipulate. A liberal's greatest fear isn't conservative anger, it's conservative evolution. It's the moment they realize you no longer need them. Not for validation, not even for closure. Indifference breaks the cycle because it signals to liberals and to yourself that the game is over. They can no longer bait you into emotional warfare. They can no longer hijack your day with petty accusations or guilt trips. You don't respond. You don't defend. You don't flinch. You simply live. This drives liberals mad because it reveals the truth they never wanted you to discover. They were never in control. You, as a conservative, just hadn't taken your power back yet. But now that you sit calmly with your self-worth, liberals are forced to confront what they've tried to avoid their entire lives, their own emptiness. Your indifference acts as a mirror, showing liberals who they are without someone else to manipulate. Trust me, they won't like the reflection. So, don't be fooled by the tantrums, the guilt, the sudden bursts of charm that liberals try to use to pull you back in. That's not love, that's desperation. That's fear in disguise. Stand your ground. Smile gently. Say less. Move forward. The less that you, as a conservative, react, the more powerful you become. Conservative indifference is not cruelty, it's healing. It is the beautiful boundary that says, I've learned, I've grown, and I will not go back. That is the kind of strength that makes a liberal truly miserable and makes you, as a conservative, truly free. Strong boundaries are one of the most powerful weapons you can possess when dealing with the liberal. They're not just preferences or suggestions. They are lines carved in conviction. When you start enforcing those lines, something changes. You stop bleeding energy into the bottomless pit of manipulation. You stop giving pieces of yourself away in exchange for false peace. The liberal, who once thrived on conservative compliance, suddenly finds themselves locked out of the very system that they used to control you. The liberal doesn't hate the boundary itself. They hate what it represents. Conservative awakening. Conservative growth. The refusal to play small anymore. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now from the ex-account Mila Joy.
Donald Trump is the best president. Donald Trump is the best president.
Yeah, amen.
You like Donald Trump?
I love Donald.
Hell yeah, I got a Trump supporter right here. Shout out Donald Trump.
Donald Trump.
Hell yeah. How you doing? I was just passing by and I saw your Trump stuff. I'm recording. I hope that's okay.
Look at you, dude.
I appreciate it. Just wanted to shake your hand. Yes, sir.
Look at you.
Yes, sir. Appreciate
right.
it. Yeah.
Look at you with your Trump hat
Oh,
on.
it's okay to
I
take a
love
video?
It. Absolutely.
Okay, yeah. Trump 2024.
Here we are.
Here we are. Let's go.
The strong survive.
Let's go. Let's
Fight,
get it.
fight, fight.
Fight, fight, fight. Trump is the greatest president of all time. Let's go. You Trump supporter, huh? Oh, she ain't a Trump supporter. That's okay. That's okay. Make America great again.
I'll take the call now.
How you ladies doing?
Stop it!
Let's make America great again.
How
y'all doing?
I have missed you so.
How you doing?
I miss him so
Appreciate-
much. I love.
And that was from the account Mila Joy. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now some motivation.
What can you do, Les? When you have been telling yourself you can reach a goal, and you've been affirming I am abundant, I am rich, I feel better than good and better than most, I am blessed and highly favored, I can make it, I'm a winner, and you losing every day. Life whipping your butt every day. What do you do? When you've lost your spirit, you've lost your job, you lost everything, life been devastated. What if you give it everything you have, and you come up short? What if you get weak along the way and you throw in a towel on yourself? You surrender to your emotions. What then? A lot of people become discouraged. They become frustrated. And they say, oh, what the heck? And they go back to doing what they were doing before, saying it doesn't work. Come on, be real, man. Come on, get a life. You can't do that. You can't come back from that. Life is like a grindstone. It can polish you or it can pulverize you, depending on how you position yourself.
The victim looks at failure and gets knocked down. The leader looks at failure and asks themselves, what's the opportunity here?
It's the only way to learn. Michael Jordan, he took 946 game-winning shots. He has only made 146 of those. You know what they write about? When you make it. They write about when you make it. Matter of fact, when you fail, be glad about it. Every time you fail, you're one step closer. Most people stop short of their dreams and park and get off the highway of life because of the rejections of life. You will always be rejected. I need you to evaluate yourself and ask yourself the question, how are you wired? When you have a trial or a tribulation, how are you wired? When you hear the word no, does it break you? I'm wired differently. I get excited. Oh, no. I love no. No, Eric, you can't do it. You're a high school dropout. I'll be back. I'll be back. I'll be stronger when I come back. Every no you get, don't shun the no. Every no you take the no and you recycle it. You hold on to it. You embrace every no and you let each no make you callous to no. You get so strong that when you hear no, it turns you on. Make no your vitamin. Get excited about the no. Why? Because every time someone says no, that brings you another step to a yes. You're getting closer. Trust me, you will win if you don't quit. People say, E, it seems like you're stronger now. You're more committed now. It seems like your drive is higher now. Your passion is higher now. What happened, E.T.? Because every time they close the door, I just get excited. Why? Because I am not a no. I'm one yes away. You can't keep telling me no forever. You can't keep denying me forever. This type of energy, this type of passion, you can't stop it. You can contain it for a while, but you cannot stop it. You can't defeat me. Life is a fight for territory. And once you stop fighting for what you want, what you don't want will automatically take over. It's a fight for integrity. It's a fight for character. It's a fight for a good reputation, your goals, your dreams, your ambitions, because they don't give you those things when you're born. So every morning, I've got to wake up and I've got to fight. I got to fight for my dreams. I got to fight for character. I got to fight for integrity. I have to exercise every day. I have to drop out of my bed and do 100 push-ups every day. I have to discipline my eating. I have to turn off the news. I can't watch the news. I'm fighting for my health. You've got to continue to work on yourself personally. You've got to decide to be relentless. You've got to decide never to give up. You've got to find some reasons within yourself that will give you the stamina when life catches you on the blind side to get back up again, to keep on calling and coming back again and again and again. There's somebody else in you back there, and as you work toward becoming that person, who you are right now must die daily. You got to kill that person off. You got to be willing to give up who you've been for who you can become.
And that was Motivation. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, little meditation. And that's a little bit of meditation. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, Tony.
For the first time in a long time, man, I don't see nothing but Americans on this work site. You know what I'm saying? We making America great again, one work site at a time.
And that was the account Tony from X. Back in a minute. Thank you. Now, Dr. Berg.
So let's talk about that after lunch siesta where you want to take a nap and why that is due to carbohydrates more than any other reason. Now, there are many countries that take a siesta. And by the way, siesta comes from the Spanish word meaning nap and the Latin word for sixth hour. And that refers to the countdown from dawn, meaning midday. So there are many countries known for these siestas. Mexico, certain countries in South America, Italy, Philippines, Vietnam, certain Mediterranean countries, Southern Europe, and Spain. And of course, in America, we don't really officially say that we have a siesta, but we basically fall asleep in front of our computer right after lunch. So the question is it normal for someone to get tired after eating? Now, there's actually a medical term for this. Postprandial, which means after a meal, somnolence. And that means food coma. And of course, this is a common feature for diabetes. So when you have the combination of especially refined carbohydrates and volume of calories together, it can really create a blood sugar spike and an insulin spike. Both of these are going to make you tired. Now, the question is, why would they make you tired? There's several mechanisms going on that go beyond the insulin resistance mechanism where you're having a lack of fuel go into the cell. All right, number one, you activate something called the parasympathetic nervous system. So there's two parts of the autonomic nervous system. You have the sympathetic, which is flight or fight, and the parasympathetic, which is rest and digest. So when you eat a lot of food, especially refined carbohydrates, you're going to activate this system over here and inhibit this system, and you're going to want to take a nap. So that would be the gut-brain connection. And with that, you're going to have less blood to the brain and more blood into the digestive system. So try to be awake when you don't have the amount of blood to the brain. It's a little more difficult. All right, 3, decreases the arousal pathways in the hypothalamus in the brain, making you tired. And number 4, and this is interesting, when you consume a high-carb diet, you're going to absorb certain amino acids, but not others. Specifically, you're going to absorb valine, leucine, isoleucine, but not tryptophan. So tryptophan is going to be absorbed through the blood-brain barrier, and it's going to directly turn into serotonin and melatonin, the sleep hormone. So if you live in any one of these countries or in the U.S., I want you to try an experiment. Like in Mexico, you would have tortillas and corn-based type things, rice. Italy, you're going to have pasta. Philippines and Vietnam, you're going to have rice noodles. The Mediterranean, you're going to have more pasta and bread. Southern Europe, well, you might have potatoes or some other starch. And in Spain, you're going to have more carbs. So here's a challenge. Try not consuming carbohydrates at your lunch for 1 week. And you're going to find your energy is going to go straight up. The need for a nap is not going to be there. And for those of you that are new to my channel, check out this video on low carbs. It will tell you exactly what to eat.
And that was Dr. Berg. Back in a minute.
Voorzitter, het is ongelooflijk. Maar vorige week vrijdag zette dit kabinet en deze minister een streep door de wet die voorrang voor statushouders op sociale huurwoningen moest verbieden. Het kabinet Jette laat die voorrang voor statushouders dus doodleuk bestaan. En dat is niets anders dan een dolk in de rug van miljoenen Nederlanders die al jaren op een huurwoning wachten. En nu dus nog langer moeten wachten, omdat gelukzoekers blijven voorgaan. Dat is een ongekende schande en pure discriminatie van Nederlanders. Het is ook ontzettend laf dat dit kabinetsbesluit 2 dagen na de gemeenteraadsverkiezingen bekend is gemaakt. Bang voor een politieke afrekening als dit voor de verkiezingen bekend zou worden, hield het kabinet en deze minister het tot na de verkiezingen onder haar pet. Maar als er iets is, voorzitter, waar miljoenen Nederlanders nu meteen vandaag nog van af willen, dan is het die idiote voorrangsregeling voor statushouders. Want het is echt geen dag langer te verkopen dat vreemdelingen voorrang krijgen op een huurwoning, terwijl we in dit land kampen met een gigantisch woningtekort. Er zijn, voorzitter, sinds 2010 al zo'n 200.000 huurwoningen met voorrang aan statushouders weggegeven. En dat gaat nu dus gewoon door. En dan moet de minister niet in haar brief gaan piepen dat er een te hoge instroom van asielzoekers is. Want als je dat niet wil, dan moet je maar een asielstop invoeren, zoals mijn partij wil. Maar doe je dat niet, ja, dan komen er ieder jaar opnieuw zo'n 100.000 asielzoekers Nederland binnen. Evenveel als een stad als Alkmaar, Delft of Deventer. Voorzitter, die asielzoekers willen allemaal een woning. En dat krijgen ze ook van deze regering. En ook nog een keer met voorrang. En dat moet nu stoppen. En daarom, voorzitter, zeg ik tegen deze minister, maak vandaag nog uw besluit ongedaan om de wet in te trekken die het verbiedt om statushouders voorrang te geven. Met minder nemen wij geen genoegen. Dus niet zodra het kan of dat soort onzinteksten, maar nu en wel meteen. Graag een toezegging.
And that was Geert Wilders. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now the Mossad.
Beirut, June the 14th, 1973. 4:17 in the afternoon. The bride wears imported French lace. 300 guests fill the garden of the Hamra Grand Hotel. A photographer in a cream linen suit adjusts his Leica, framing the couple against a backdrop of jasmine and bougainvillea. He has taken 219 photographs since noon. Only 7 contain the bride and groom. The other 212 focus on a man seated at table 17 who will not live to see July. The photographer is not Lebanese, and the camera contains more than film. In the spring of 1973, Beirut was the most glamorous city in the Middle East. The Lebanese capital had earned its reputation as the Paris of the Orient through decades of careful cultivation. International banks operated from gleaming towers along the Corniche. Fashion boutiques lined Hamra Street. The casino at Mameltine drew wealthy gamblers from across the Arab world, and the city's hotels, from the St. George to the Phoenicia, hosted a constant parade of diplomats, businessmen, celebrities, and spies. This was before the civil war that would tear Lebanon apart beginning in 1975, before the Israeli invasion of 1982, before the city became synonymous with car bombs and hostage crises and sectarian bloodshed. In 1973, Beirut still believed in its own myth of cosmopolitan sophistication. The wedding season that year was particularly lavish. Lebanon's wealthy families used weddings as displays of status and alliance. Ceremonies stretched across entire weekends. Guest lists numbered in the hundreds. Photographers were hired not merely to document the events, but to create visual records that would be displayed in homes and offices for generations. Among the photographers who worked these events, one name had risen quickly in reputation over the previous 18 months. Jean-Pierre Martel, a French-Algerian who had arrived in Beirut in late 1971 with a portfolio of fashion work from Paris magazines and a charming manner that made wealthy mothers trust him with their daughter's most important day. Martel was handsome in a slightly weathered way, dark hair graying at the temples, deep-set eyes that seemed to notice everything. He spoke Arabic with a Maghrebi accent that he explained by reference to his Algerian father. He spoke French with the precision of someone educated in Paris. He carried himself with the quiet confidence of an artist who knew his worth. His work was exceptional. He had an eye for composition that elevated ordinary moments into something approaching art. He captured emotion without sentimentality. He made brides look beautiful, and grooms look dignified, and families look unified, even when they were not. Within a year, Martel had become the photographer of choice for Beirut's elite. Maronite Christian families hired him for cathedral weddings. Sunni Muslim families brought him to garden receptions. Druze clans trusted him at mountain ceremonies. He moved between communities with an ease that few outsiders achieved. What none of his clients knew was that Jean-Pierre Martel did not exist. The man they hired was named David Rosen. He was 34 years old. He had been born in Haifa. He had served in the Israel Defense Forces as a paratrooper before being recruited by Mossad in 1967. He had spent 2 years training in photography, languages, and the particular skills required to become someone else entirely. He had been inserted into Beirut with a single long-term objective: get close to the men who planned attacks against Israel, document their networks, their habits, their vulnerabilities, and when the time came, provide the intelligence that would allow others to act. The wedding photography business was not a random cover. It was the product of 6 months of analysis by Mossad's planning division, who had identified a critical gap in their intelligence on Palestinian militant leadership in Lebanon. The leaders lived in protected compounds. They traveled in convoys. They varied their routines. They trusted almost no one outside their immediate circles. But they had families, and families had celebrations, and celebrations required services from outsiders who could move through spaces that were otherwise impenetrable: a caterer, a florist, a musician, a photographer. The camera was the perfect instrument. It provided a reason to be present. It provided a reason to observe. It provided a reason to point a lens at faces that would otherwise turn away from scrutiny. And in 1973, the camera that David Rosen carried contained technology that his subjects could not have imagined. The camera was a Leica M4, one of the most respected photographic instruments in the world. Professional photographers prized it for its precision engineering, its quiet shutter, its exceptional optics. It was exactly the kind of camera a high-end wedding photographer would carry. This particular Leica had been modified in a Mossad technical facility in a suburb of Tel Aviv. The modifications were invisible to external inspection. The camera functioned normally. It took photographs of the same quality as any unmodified M4. Its weight was within the normal range. Its sound was unchanged. Anyone who handled it, even another professional photographer, would notice nothing unusual. But inside the camera body, in spaces created by removing non-essential mechanical components, technicians had installed 3 additional devices. The first was a miniature audio recorder. It used a magnetic wire system derived from technology originally developed for aviation black boxes. It could record up to 4 hours of ambient sound with surprising clarity, activated by a hidden switch disguised as part of the film advance mechanism. When Rosen stood near a conversation, appearing to adjust his camera settings, he was actually recording every word. The second device was a modified light meter. Standard Leicas of that era used external light meters, small accessories that photographers held up to measure ambient illumination. This light meter contained a radio transmitter that could send burst signals to a receiving station up to 3 kilometers away. The signals were too brief to be detected by standard counter-surveillance equipment. They allowed Rosen to communicate his location and status without any visible action. The third modification was the most ingenious. The camera's standard lens had been replaced with an optically identical lens that contained a second imaging system. While the primary system captured normal photographs on standard film, the secondary system used a different film stock, one with extreme sensitivity that could capture images in conditions too dark for conventional photography. This film was loaded in a hidden compartment and advanced by a separate mechanism triggered by a slight rotation of the focus ring. The practical effect was that Rosen could take 2 photographs simultaneously. One visible, normal, intended to be developed and delivered to clients. One invisible, secret, capturing whatever intelligence value the scene contained. Over 18 months in Beirut, Rosen had photographed over 40 weddings. He had compiled files on more than 200 individuals connected to Palestinian militant organizations. He had recorded conversations that revealed operational planning, financial networks, and internal conflicts within the leadership. But by the spring of 1973, his mission was about to change. On May the 2nd, Rosen received a coded message through a dead drop in the basement of a bookshop on Bliss Street. The message contained only a name and a date, Mahmoud Hamshari, June the 14th. Hamshari was not the target. Hamshari had been assassinated by Mossad in Paris 5 months earlier, killed by a bomb planted in his telephone. But Hamshari had a brother, and that brother was getting married in Beirut in 6 weeks. The wedding would bring together a gathering of Palestinian leadership that Mossad had been trying to document for years. Men who never appeared in public together. Men who coordinated their activities through intermediaries and couriers. Men who trusted no photographs, granted no interviews, left no records. They would all be present at the wedding of Ibrahim Hamshari to Leila Nassif on June the 14th at the Hamra Grand Hotel. And Jean-Pierre Martel had just been hired as the photographer. The wedding of Ibrahim Hamshari was not merely a family celebration. It was a political event disguised as a social occasion. Ibrahim was the younger brother of the martyred Mahmoud, who had served as the Palestine Liberation Organization's representative in France before his assassination. The family had deep connections to the Palestinian leadership. The bride's family, the Nassifs, were wealthy Sunni merchants with ties to both the Lebanese political establishment and various Palestinian factions. The guest list, which Rosen obtained through a contact in the hotel's catering department, read like a directory of the Palestinian resistance movement. Salah Khalaf, known by his nom de guerre, Abu Iyad, head of intelligence for the PLO. Ali Hassan Salameh, commander of Force 17, Yasser Arafat's personal security unit. Khalil al-Wazir, known as Abu Jihad, the PLO's military chief. Representatives from the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, delegates from the Democratic Front, emissaries from half a dozen smaller factions. For Israeli intelligence, this gathering represented an unprecedented opportunity, not for an attack. The diplomatic consequences of striking a wedding would have been catastrophic. Lebanon would have expelled every Israeli asset in the country. International condemnation would have been universal. Even the most aggressive voices in the Israeli security establishment understood that some lines could not be crossed. But for intelligence collection, the wedding was invaluable. These men rarely allowed themselves to be photographed. They used code names. They traveled under false identities. Israeli files on some of them contained only verbal descriptions, often contradictory, provided by sources who had glimpsed them briefly in circumstances that made detailed observation impossible. A wedding photographer could change that. Rosen would be expected to photograph every table, every group of guests, every moment of the celebration. He would move through the event with complete freedom, pointing his camera at faces that normally turned away from lenses, capturing images that no surveillance operation could otherwise obtain. The secondary film system would document the intelligence targets. The primary system would produce the wedding photographs that Ibrahim and Leila would display in their home, never knowing that the same camera had also created a classified archive in Tel Aviv. But obtaining the guest list revealed something else, something that transformed the operation from intelligence collection into something far more urgent. Among the names was one that Rosen did not recognize. A notation in Arabic indicated that this guest would be seated at table 17, a position of honor near the head table. The notation identified him only as the engineer. Rosen reported this through his burst transmitter. The response came within 12 hours. The engineer was the code name for a man, Israeli, Intelligence had been hunting for 2 years. His real name was Zaid al-Masri. He was 43 years old. He had been trained in explosives at a Soviet facility in Crimea. He was responsible for designing the bombs used in at least 7 attacks on Israeli targets, including one that had killed 14 civilians at a bus station in Tel Aviv in 1971. Al-Masri never appeared in public. He lived in a protected compound in the Sabra refugee camp. He communicated only through trusted couriers. He had never been photographed. Until now. The message from Tel Aviv was unambiguous. Identify the engineer, obtain clear photographs, determine his patterns, his security, his vulnerabilities, and do not compromise the cover under any circumstances. The wedding was in 39 days. The weeks before the wedding required preparation that went far beyond selecting cameras and film. Rosen had to become more than a photographer. He had to become a wedding photographer who was already familiar to the families, who had a reason to be present during the preparations, who would be seen as a trusted professional rather than an outside contractor. He began with the bride's mother. Nadia Nassif was a formidable woman in her early 50s, a society hostess who had organized some of Beirut's most elaborate social events. Her approval was essential. If she accepted Martel as the photographer for her daughter's wedding, every door would open. If she had doubts, every door would close. Rosen arranged an introduction through a mutual acquaintance, a Maronite jeweler whose shop on Acrefier served clients from every community. He presented his portfolio. He discussed his artistic philosophy. He listened attentively to Nadia's vision for the event. He also did something that no other photographer had done. He offered to document the preparations, the fittings for the bride's dress, the selection of flowers, the tastings with the caterer. He would create a complete visual narrative of the wedding, not just the ceremony and reception. This was unprecedented in Beirut's wedding photography market. Other photographers arrived on the day and left when the cake was cut. Martel was offering something closer to what fashion magazines provided for celebrity weddings in Europe. Nadia was intrigued. More importantly, she was flattered. Here was a French photographer with a sophisticated aesthetic who was treating her daughter's wedding as a significant artistic project. She agreed. Over the following 5 weeks, Rosen was present at 17 different events related to the wedding. He photographed the bride trying on dresses at a salon in Hamra. He documented the groom's family meeting with the bride's family to finalize arrangements. He captured the arrival of floral arrangements from a greenhouse in the Chouf Mountains. Each session served multiple purposes. On the surface, Rosen was building a relationship with the families, establishing himself as a trusted presence who would be invisible on the wedding day because he was already familiar. Beneath the surface, he was mapping security arrangements. He observed which men accompanied Ibrahim Hamshari to meetings. He noted the cars they drove, the routes they took, the patterns of their movements. He identified the bodyguards who would be present at the wedding and assessed their training and alertness. Most importantly, he was searching for information about Table 17. The seating chart was finalized on June the 6th. Rosen obtained a copy by photographing it during a meeting at the hotel, using his standard camera in a way that appeared to be testing lighting conditions. Table 17 would seat 8 guests. The engineer was assigned seat 4, facing the dance floor, with his back to a wall of windows overlooking the garden. The other 7 guests at the table were identified by name. 3 were members of the Hamshari family. 2 were representatives of a Palestinian faction based in Damascus. 2 were listed only with first names, likely bodyguards or personal assistants. The engineer would be protected, but he would also be visible. Rosen calculated sight lines from every position in the venue. He identified 3 locations from which he could photograph Table 17 without appearing to focus on it. He planned his movements for the reception, the sequence of tables he would visit, the timing that would allow him to capture the engineer at multiple points during the evening. On June the 12th, 2 days before the wedding, he sent his final preparation report through the burst transmitter. He was ready. What he did not know was that Tel Aviv had made a decision that would change everything. The message arrived at 0300 on June the 13th, less than 40 hours before the wedding. Rosen retrieved it from a secondary dead drop, a hollowed book in a used bookshop near the American University. The message was longer than usual, requiring nearly 10 minutes to decode using the one-time pad he kept hidden in the false bottom of his camera case. The content was unexpected. Intelligence collection was no longer the primary objective. A new objective had been authorized at the highest levels. The engineer was to be eliminated. The wedding would provide the opportunity. Rosen would provide the means. The message outlined the method. A secondary operative would be positioned outside the hotel. Rosen would photograph the engineer, establish his exact location, and transmit coordinates using the burst system. The operative would handle the rest. Rosen read the message twice. Then he burned it, flushing the ashes down the drain of his apartment sink. He understood the logic. The engineer was responsible for bombs that had killed Israeli civilians. He was planning additional attacks. He rarely left his protected compound. The wedding was a unique opportunity, perhaps the only opportunity for years. He also understood the risks. If the operation succeeded, his cover would likely survive. A Palestinian leader killed near a wedding could be attributed to any number of enemies. The factions were constantly fighting among themselves. Assassinations were common. No one would suspect the French photographer who had been present at dozens of similar events. But if the operation failed, if the method was detected, if any connection was made to Martel, 18 months of patient work would be destroyed. Every contact he had made would be compromised. Every piece of intelligence he had gathered would be questioned. And David Rosen himself would likely not leave Beirut alive. He had until the wedding to decide whether to proceed. This was not insubordination. The message had included a code phrase that indicated discretionary authority. Rosen was authorized to abort if he assessed the risks as unacceptable. The decision was his. He spent the night reviewing every element of the operation: the venue, the security, the sightlines, the escape routes, the timing. By dawn, he had made his decision. He would proceed, but not with the method Tel Aviv had proposed. He had a different idea, one that would accomplish the objective without firing a shot inside the hotel. One that would use the wedding not as a killing ground, but as the first step in a longer operation. He composed a response and transmitted it through the burst system at 07:15. The response from Tel Aviv arrived 4 hours later. Approved. June the 14th, 1973. Cloudless sky. Temperature reaching 31 degrees Celsius by noon. The wedding ceremony took place at 3 p.m. in the ballroom of the Hamra Grand Hotel. 312 guests filled rows of gilded chairs. The bride wore a gown designed by a Lebanese couturier who had trained in Paris. The groom wore a dark suit with a white rose in his lapel. Rosen photographed it all. He moved through the ceremony with practiced invisibility, capturing moments that would become family treasures. The exchange of rings, the first kiss, the tears of mothers, the proud smiles of fathers. He was exactly what he appeared to be, a professional doing his job with skill and discretion. The reception began at 5. Guests moved to the garden, where tables had been arranged beneath a canopy of white fabric. A 12-piece orchestra played Arabic classics, alternating with French chansons. Waiters circulated with champagne and medse. Rosen began his systematic documentation. He started with the head table, photographing the bride and groom with their immediate families. He moved to the surrounding tables, capturing groups of guests who smiled and posed and raised their glasses. He worked efficiently, spending no more than 5 minutes at each table before moving to the next. At 6:23, he reached table 17. The engineer was seated in position 4, exactly as the seating chart had indicated. He was a thin man with a neatly trimmed gray beard and wire-rimmed glasses. He wore a dark suit that was slightly too large, as if he had lost weight recently. His eyes moved constantly, scanning the garden, tracking the movements of waiters and guests, and the photographer who was approaching his table. Rosen maintained his professional demeanor. He asked the table if they would like a group photograph. The guests nodded. They arranged themselves, the engineer remaining seated while others stood behind. Him. Rosen raised his camera. He adjusted the focus. He pressed the shutter. The primary film captured 8 guests smiling at a wedding reception. The secondary film captured the face of a man responsible for the deaths of dozens of Israeli civilians. Rosen took 3 more photographs of the table, varying the composition, ensuring that he had clear images of the engineer from multiple angles. He thanked the guests and moved on. Over the next 90 minutes, he circled back to table 17 twice more, each time with a professional pretext. A photograph of the engineer talking with another guest. A candid shot of the table during the toast to the bride and groom. Natural moments that a wedding photographer would capture as a matter of course. By 8:15, Rosen had documented the engineer more thoroughly than any previous intelligence effort had achieved. But his modified plan required more than photographs. At 8:47, he approached table 17 for the final time. He carried a small leather case in addition to his camera. Inside the case were business cards. He introduced himself to the guests at the table. He explained that he had been so impressed by the sophistication of the gathering that he wished to offer his services for future events. He distributed cards to each guest. When he reached the engineer, he held out a card with a slight bow of professional courtesy. The engineer hesitated. His eyes studied Rosen's face. His hand remained at his side. Then, slowly, he reached out and took the card. He glanced at it briefly. Jean-Pierre Martel. Photograph, an address on Hamra Street. A telephone number. He placed the card in his jacket pocket. Rosen smiled, thanked the table, and moved away. The card was not merely paper. It was coated with a chemical compound that would transfer to the engineer's fingers and remain detectable for approximately 72 hours. The compound was invisible, odorless, and harmless, but it could be detected by specialized equipment from a distance of up to 15 meters. Rosen had just tagged the engineer. When Al-Masri returned to his compound in the Sabra camp, when he resumed his protected existence behind walls and guards and routines designed to make him invisible, he would carry with him a trace that Mossad could follow. The assassination would not happen at the wedding. It would happen later in circumstances that could never be connected to a French photographer who had simply been doing his job. The wedding continued until nearly midnight. Rosen photographed the cutting of the cake, the first dance, the departure of the bride and groom. He packed his equipment. He thanked the families for the honor of documenting their celebration. He walked out of the Hamra Grand Hotel carrying 231 photographs on his primary film and 47 photographs on his secondary film. He also carried the knowledge that in approximately 72 hours his work would be complete. The chemical compound that coated the business card was designated in Mossad technical documents as Marker 7. It had been developed over 3 years by a team of chemists working in a facility whose location remains classified. The compound bonded with human skin oils on contact. It could not be washed off with soap and water. It resisted alcohol and most common solvents. Only a specific chemical agent, which Mossad possessed and the targets did not, could remove it. Once applied, Marker 7 emitted a faint signature detectable by equipment that resembled an ordinary radio receiver. The range was limited, but within that range, the signature was unmistakable. Rosen transmitted the confirmation at 0200 on June the 15th. The engineer had been tagged. The trace was active. Now the waiting began. For the next 3 days, Rosen maintained his normal routine. He developed the wedding photographs in his darkroom on Hamra Street. He delivered proofs to the Nassif family. He accepted their praise and their payment. He scheduled consultations with 2 other families who had attended the wedding and wanted him for their own celebrations. Jean-Pierre Martel continued to exist, continued to work, continued to be exactly what he appeared. Meanwhile, a team of 3 Mossad operatives had entered Beirut through different routes. One arrived on a commercial flight from Paris. One crossed from Syria using a Lebanese identity. One came by boat from Cyprus, landing at a private dock north of Junier. They carried the detection equipment. They also carried the means to complete the operation once the engineer's location was confirmed. On June the 16th, the trace was detected. The engineer had left his compound in the Sabra camp. He was traveling in a vehicle moving north through the city. The signal was strong, indicating he was within the detection range. The team followed at a distance, tracking the trace rather than the vehicle itself. At 14:37, the signal stopped moving. The engineer had arrived at a location in the Verdun district, a residential neighborhood favored by wealthy Palestinians and their Lebanese allies. The team established observation. The building was a 4-story apartment block with a pharmacy on the ground floor. The engineer entered the building at 14:41. He did not emerge. Surveillance continued through the night. At 06:12 on June the 17th, the trace signal indicated movement inside the building. The engineer was still present. At 08:43, he exited. He walked to a waiting car. He was driven back toward the Sabra camp. The team now had critical intelligence. The engineer maintained a secondary location, an apartment that did not appear in any previous intelligence files. He visited it during daytime hours. He stayed overnight, at least occasionally. His security at this location was lighter than at his main compound. This was the vulnerability they needed. On June the 18th, the trace began to fade. The chemical compound was degrading as expected. Within 24 hours, it would be undetectable. But it had served its purpose. The team now knew exactly where to find the engineer when he believed himself invisible. The operation designated Bronze Lens concluded on June the 22nd, 1973. At approximately 1400 hours, Zaid al-Masri, known as the engineer, arrived at his apartment in the Verdun district. He was alone except for a single bodyguard who remained in the vehicle parked outside the building. At 14:17, a delivery vehicle stopped in front of the pharmacy on the ground floor. 2 men emerged, carrying what appeared to be boxes of medical supplies. They entered the building through a service entrance. At 14:23, an explosion destroyed the 3rd floor of the apartment block. The blast was precisely targeted. The apartments on the 2nd and 4th floors sustained minor damage. The pharmacy was unharmed. No residents of other units were killed. The engineer died instantly. Lebanese authorities attributed the attack to internal Palestinian conflicts. The Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine was initially blamed based on disinformation planted through channels that journalists trusted. Later theories suggested Iraqi involvement, or Syrian, or Libyan. The true perpetrators were never identified. Jean-Pierre Martel was not connected to the incident in any way. He had been photographing a luncheon at the Bristol Hotel at the time of the explosion, in the presence of 30 witnesses who could confirm his location. He continued to work in Beirut for another 14 months, documenting weddings and social events, building files on Palestinian leadership, reporting through channels that were never compromised. He was extracted in August of 1974, 3 months before the Lebanese Civil War began. He crossed into Israel through a border point in the south, traveling in a vehicle with diplomatic plates. David Rosen returned to Tel Aviv. He was debriefed for 6 weeks. He received a commendation that was recorded in a file that remains classified. He was assigned to a training position, teaching the next generation of operatives the techniques he had developed. The Leica M4, with its hidden modifications, was retired to a museum that no one outside Mossad has ever seen. The wedding photographs that Jean-Pierre Martel delivered to Ibrahim and Leila Hamshari remained in their family home for nearly 2 decades. They were destroyed when the building was damaged during the Israeli siege of Beirut in 1982. The photographs that David Rosen captured on the secondary film system remained in Mossad archives. They were used to identify Palestinian operatives for years afterward. Some of the men photographed at that wedding were later killed in Israeli operations. Others made peace. A few are still alive, elderly now, perhaps unaware that their faces were captured 40 years ago by a camera that saw more than they ever knew. In the years that followed, the techniques developed during Operation Bronze Lens were refined and repeated. Photographers, caterers, florists, musicians, wedding planners, event coordinators. Each profession offered unique advantages for intelligence operations. Each provided access to social gatherings where targets believed themselves safe among friends and family. The principle was always the same. People reveal themselves at celebrations. They relax their vigilance. They gather with others they would normally meet, only in secret. They allow strangers with professional reasons into spaces that are otherwise impenetrable. A camera is a license to observe. A photographer is expected to look closely at faces, to study compositions, to notice details. Behavior that would be suspicious in any other context becomes invisible when performed by someone holding a camera. This invisibility has limits. The targets of intelligence operations eventually learned to be cautious. Around photographers, security protocols evolved. Cameras were inspected. Credentials were verified. The easy access that David Rosen enjoyed in 1973 became harder to obtain in the decades that followed. But the fundamental vulnerability remains. Weddings still happen. Families still gather. Celebrations still require documentation. And somewhere at some event, someone is pointing a camera at faces that would prefer not to be seen. Not every photographer is a spy. The vast majority are exactly what they appear to be, professionals doing honest work, preserving memories for families who trust them. But some are not. And the difference between a photograph that captures a moment and a photograph that captures a target is invisible to everyone except the person pressing the shutter.
And that was the Mossad. Back in a minute.
Nothing worth doing ever came easy. Treat the word impossible as nothing more than motivation. Never, ever quit. Never quit. Adversity makes you stronger. Don't give in, don't back down, and never stop doing what you know is right. They want to take away my freedom because I will never let them take away your freedoms. They're not coming after me, they're coming after you, and I just happen to be standing in their way.
When they couldn't beat him, they tried to bankrupt him.
President Trump is back in a New York City courtroom.
When that didn't work, they tried to put him in federal prison.
Raided by the FBI.
When that didn't work, they even tried to kill him.
He just tried to kill President Trump.
Donald Trump still stands, ready to fight, ready to win, and ready to make America great again.
This is Donald Trump's house, brother.
This election, we all get to choose. I'm going to choose real American leadership and a real American badass. The 45th and soon to be 47th President Donald J. Trump.
Defeat inflation quickly, and we will make America affordable again. I will cut your energy costs in half. It's time for the working man and woman to finally catch a break. We are going to bring back the American dream, bigger, better, and stronger than ever before. When I'm back in the White House, we will restore world peace, and it will be again peace through strength. I will launch the largest deportation program in American history. I will put these vicious and bloodthirsty criminals in jail or kick them the hell out of our country. November 5th, 2024, it will be Liberation Day in America. We all salute the same great American flag. Our best days are yet to come. Together, we will make America great again. America is a land of heroes, a place where greatness is born, where destinies are forged, and where legends come to life. This is the home of Thomas Edison and Teddy Roosevelt, of many great generals, including Washington, Pershing, Patton, and MacArthur. This is the home of Abraham Lincoln, Frederick Douglass, Amelia Earhart, Harriet Tubman, the Wright brothers, Neil Armstrong, and so many more. This is the country where children learn names like Wyatt Earp, Davy Crockett, and Annie Oakley. This is the place where the Pilgrims landed at Plymouth and where Texas patriots made their last stand at the Alamo. The American nation was carved out of the vast frontier by the toughest, strongest, fiercest, and most determined men and women ever to walk on the face of the earth. Our ancestors braved the unknown, tamed the wilderness, settled the Wild West, lifted millions from poverty, disease, and hunger, vanquished tyranny and fascism, ushered the world to new heights of science and medicine, laid down the railroads, dug out the canals, raised up the skyscrapers. Our ancestors built the most exceptional republic ever to exist in all of human history, and we are making it greater than ever before. This is our glorious and magnificent inheritance. We are Americans. We are pioneers. We are the pathfinders. We settled the new world. We built the modern world, and we changed history forever by embracing the eternal truth that everyone is made equal by the hand of Almighty God. America is the place where anything can happen. America is the place where anyone can rise. And here, on this land, on this soil, on this continent, the most incredible dreams come true. This nation is our canvas, and this country is our masterpiece. We look at tomorrow and see unlimited frontiers just waiting to be explored. Our brightest discoveries are not yet known. Our most thrilling stories are not yet told. Our grandest journeys are not yet made. The American age, the American epic, the American adventure has only just begun. Our spirit is still young. The sun is still rising. God's grace is still shining. And my fellow Americans, the best is yet to come. This is a movement like we've never seen in the history of our country.
Wisconsin is Trump country.
And that's what this fight is all about. We're taking on the failed political establishment and restoring government of, by, and for the people. It's the people. You're the people. You won the election.
We love this country. We love Donald Trump.
Promises made, promises kept.
We support President Trump. This is epic.
Donald Trump is our president!
With every last ounce of heart and hope and sweat and soul, we are going to make our stand. We are going to stand for liberty. We are going to stand for justice. We are going to stand for freedom. And we are going to stand for the sacred rights given to us by the hand of Almighty God. You joined our movement greatest movement in the history of our country. You protected your family. You defended your dignity. You recaptured your destiny. And you took back your country with that great election 2.5 years ago. We are one united movement, one united people, and one United States of America.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the President of the United States, Donald J. Trump.
You have always been loyal to this nation. Now you finally have a president who is loyal to you. Every day between now and November 2020, we are going to keep on working, we are going to keep on fighting, and we are going to keep on winning, winning, winning. We will make America wealthy again. We will make America strong again. We will make America safe again. And we will make America great again. Thank you. If I give you one message to hold in your hearts today, it's this. Treat the word impossible as nothing more than motivation. Relish the opportunity to be an outsider, because it's the outsiders who change the world and who make a real and lasting difference. The more that a broken system tells you that you're wrong, the more certain you should be that you must keep pushing ahead. You must keep pushing forward. Our movement is about replacing a failed and corrupt political establishment with a new government controlled by you, the American people. The Washington establishment and the financial and media corporations that fund it exist for only one reason: to protect and enrich itself. In America, we don't worship government, we worship God. My administration will always support and defend your religious liberty. There is nothing that we cannot do. There is absolutely nothing we cannot match. There is no challenge that you will let us down. You will never let us down. The people of Ohio will never let us down. This towering American spirit has prevailed over every challenge and lifted us to the summit of human endeavor. At no time before have voters faced a clearer choice between two parties, two visions, two philosophies, or two agendas. This election will decide whether we save the American dream or whether we allow a socialist agenda to demolish our cherished destiny. Your vote will decide whether we protect law-abiding Americans or whether we give free rein to violent anarchists, agitators, and criminals who threaten our citizens. And this election will decide whether we will defend the American way of life or whether we will allow a radical movement to completely dismantle and destroy it. Our radical Democrat opponents are driven by hatred, prejudice, and rage. They want to destroy you, and they want to destroy our country as we know it. I'm Donald Trump, and I approve this message.
4 years ago, we took a wrong turn and lost our purpose. We lost the strength that makes Americans who we are. If we dared to speak the truth, it was called hate speech, and our values were labeled shameful. That's when everything we care about fell apart. We surrendered our borders, our paychecks, and our courage. Our patriotism was called toxic. Men could beat up women and win medals, but there was no prize for the guy who got up every day to do his job. Now we're being asked to settle for the way things are. And we're wondering if America can make a comeback. We can, because we've done it before. When we get knocked down, we don't stay down. We get up again. We fight. We fight. We fight.
I'm Donald J. Trump, and I approve this message.
What will we do with this moment? How will we be remembered? Look at the opportunities before us.
This election really isn't about the left versus the right. It's about we the people choosing our government and the choice between freedom versus tyranny.
Nobody has a chronic disease burden like we have. Why are we allowing this to happen to our children? Ultimately, the only thing that will save our country is if we choose to love our kids more than we hate each other.
What is going on here is deeper than politics. It is deeply spiritual. We are being called to rise above the hatred and the fear and the evil.
We need to remember above and beyond that we must love our neighbors, that we must treat other people as we hope to be treated.
You want to be a rebel? You want to be a hippie? You want to stick it to the man? Show up on your college campus and try calling yourself a conservative.
America is going to reach heights that it has never seen before. The future is going to be amazing.
Don't you want healthy children? Don't you want a president that's going to make America healthy again?
I come to you today as a former Democrat. I will be a first-time Trump voter tonight.
This country, and it's the people who are making America great again.
Thank you. This is Ron, your host, the only true conservative in the United States today, bidding adios to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there, and reminding you that you're not neutral and that the government has no rights.